self-reliant life is really not for the faint-hearted. It's disgusting out here today, but you just got to get on. It's not an office life. Let me very quickly show you the right way to harvest rhubarb. Find the big leaves, look for the ones with the big fat stems, grab low and pull, and the stem comes away like a heel from the rhubarb crown. You take a big knife, 2 quick cuts, chop, chop, and there's your stick of rhubarb. It's foul out there, isn't it? Normally I'll do some workshop jobs today, but I can't take any video in the workshop when it's raining hard because of that tin roof. The rain on the tin roof makes it sound like you're inside a drum. So come into the kitchen with us today and we'll make some of the fruit leathers that people have asked about how we do. So we'll have a manly cup, a black coffee to warm up first, and then we'll get on. Fruit leathers are simple. What they are is stewed fruit, cooked to the point of being a thick paste, spread in dehydrator and dried to a jelly-like consistency. They're sold commercially as fruit roll-ups, fruit wind-ups and school bars and various other names and forms, but they're all dried stewed fruit. You can do them with and without sweeteners, you can do them with and without various flavouring additives, but ultimately that's what they are. It's a technique that lends itself to rhubarb if you're going to dry rhubarb, because rhubarb, like celery, is a stem, so it's full of quite tough fibres to support a big leaf at the top. And if you dry that in big chunks, you end up with big chunks of dried fibre, which isn't particularly appetising. But slice it thinly, stew it down, you can even sort of blend it or liquidise it, and what you end up with is a delicious fruit treat. So let's have a look how we do that. The chopping technique is very simple. You want your slices as thin as you can cut them. If you're planning on adding a bit of sugar to your rhubarb, and you don't have to, a little later in the season I will do this and sweeten it just with fresh strawberries. But if you are going to add a bit of sugar, add just a sprinkle as you're slicing every few layers. And what that will do is draw liquid from the rhubarb to cook the rhubarb in. You won't need to add tablespoons of water at the beginning of the cooking process. We've done a decent amount of rhubarb here, I haven't weighed it. This isn't that kind of a recipe. But we do that because we're preserving food for the winter. You may not be. You don't have to use chuffing great bowls and vast quantities of everything for this. You want to just do a small amount for a healthy snack for your kids. Fruit leather can be incredibly healthy, no sugar added and so on and so forth. Do it. You know, this is a very flexible technique. All we're showing is a way to make something. Do as much or as little as you want. Now that we've cut it, it's going to go in a pan, splash of water if you haven't added any sugar. And if you want to, add other flavourings at this point. So a great example is grated root ginger. Rhubarb and ginger just go together. It's kind of like chilli and garlic. It's one of those flavours that combine well. I wouldn't, though, add any sweetening agents at this point. What I like to do is cook the fruit down and add sweetening agents at the last minute just to taste, so I can see how sweet it's getting, because I'm not a fan of things that are over sweet. But let's get this in the pan and go on to the next step. This is tricky. I'm probably going to make a mess of it, but what I want to show you is what I meant by drawing off liquid. All of that isn't water that's been added. That's come from the rhubarb itself, and that is more than sufficient to cook this rhubarb in. To stew down the rhubarb, turn on the heat, but very low. Just warm the rhubarb through. That'll start the juices flowing, and when you've got half an inch or an inch of liquid at the bottom of the pan, turn the heat up and cook the rest down more quickly. Quite quickly, if you move the top material aside, you can see that there is a deep layer of liquid at the bottom of the pan. And that's our cue to turn up the heat. Keep stirring because we want nothing to stick, and cook this lot down to a pulp. We've cooked the rhubarb down now to a very loose, sloppy consistency almost. Now's the time to add any other ingredients that we want to. We had a great year last year for strawberries and we dried a load. So some of those are going to go into this stewed rhubarb, along with just a little maple syrup, just to lift the flavour. Adding dried fruit to this is not conventional, but it does help in a couple of ways. One of the things it will do is absorb some of the liquid from the rhubarb. I mean, we don't have to cook down quite as much. After a few more minutes cooking, those strawberries have done several things. They've thickened the fruit because they've absorbed moisture. They've made it a much redder colour. What you can't see, unfortunately, is that they've also sweetened the rhubarb quite considerably. Obviously strawberries are much more naturally sweet. So adding the ingredients one at a time as we do this allows us then to go, how much artificial sweetness, if any, do I want to add to this fruit? I'm not going to need to add a lot of artificial sweetness, but I do like maple syrup, and almost more for its taste than as a sweetening agent. We'll put a little bit in here. To be honest, that would probably do it. It's a good, nice, thick paste, and we've done a lot of cooking down. I am going to do one more thing, which is just give it a whiz with a stick blender. Not necessary, you don't have to. All the stick blender really does is ensure that no fibrous lumps of skin, or in the case of rhubarb, the cellulose that keeps it as stiff as a plant stalk, are left in unpalatable large amounts, and it creates a nice smooth paste ready for drying. Now in some fruits, raspberries for example, I like to dry raspberries. You can see raspberry seeds in the final dried fruit leather. So it does very much depend on your personal taste and what fruit you're planning to do this with, but it's an option for you to consider. You know that your puree is ready when you can pile it up with a spoon and it stays piled. A bit like testing for set on a jam or a jelly. You don't want this to be a runny liquid. Next stage, let it cool, and then we'll move on to turning it into fruit leather. When your fruit has cooled to the point of being able to be handled, it doesn't have to be ice cold, but you can, if you want, leave it overnight. It's a good place to pause in the process. You're going to need to set it up for dehydrating. Now that can be done in a very cool oven around about 60 centigrade, but for us we use a dehydrator. Now up until recently we've used a model called an Excalibur, which is an expensive sort of semi-professional but very large model. And we did a video recently comparing that to one of the economy models that you can get into for 40 quid or thereabouts, and then spend a little bit more and set them up almost as good as a professional model. That video I'm going to link to up here. What I'm going to do next is bring you in, show you this model, it's an Andrew James dehydrator, and show you how we set it up to make ourselves some fruit leather. This then is the economy dehydrator that we're going to be working with this year. If you want all the details and specifications, look to the video I linked to previously. This model comes with 6 trays. As you can see, the trays have a mesh on them, and if we were to put our fruit directly on that mesh, it would of course fall through. But this model is also available with a thing called a dehydrator sheet. That sits on top of the tray, and on that we will put our stewed fruit. Putting the stewed fruit on really couldn't be much simpler. You see now why it mustn't be too runny, because you want to keep a decent depth, because you'll be amazed how much thinner this gets as it dehydrates. So what we're trying to do here is keep a depth of, I would say, in old money, about 1/4 of an inch of stewed fruit right across the dehydrator sheet. Once you've spooned your mixture onto the drying sheet, use the back of a spoon or even better a palette knife just to make sure it's all at roughly the same thickness. You won't be exact, but thicker areas take longer to dry than thinner areas, so the more even you get it, the more consistent your fruit leather will be when you've dried it. Once that's done, you pop a second sheet on a second tray and do it all over again. Inevitably, I ran out of space. But the reason that we chose this particular model is that extra trays are available. So in fact, I have 9 trays in this stack now. That of course pushes the price up. When you buy all the dehydrating sheets and the extra trays, you can almost double the price of this. So you're getting into the sort of £80 to £100, but without running extra electricity, you can dry a great deal more and a great deal more flexibly. If you don't want it, then by all means, don't buy it. Now what we need to do is set it for the right temperature, about 60 centigrade, and the appropriate amount of time. So we hit the power on button and it defaults to 70. Press it repeatedly and it gives us 60 centigrade. Press the timer button and that will cycle through the times. I'm going to start it at about 18 hours of drying. I think it'll probably need less, but I will check before bed and I can adjust the time accordingly. We've been dehydrating for a while now. What I'd like to do is bring you in a little bit closer, because what you will always find with these bottom fan dehydrators is that they dry far more quickly at the bottom than they do at the top. So I'm going to bed shortly, and what I'm going to do now that it's been going for a while is change the order of the trays around so they dry more or less evenly, because we've reversed the order. Come in close and have a look. Let me just take the lid off. I've closed down the dehydrator for a few minutes just so that the fan is somewhat less noisy. As you can see, the top one doesn't look very different than when we started. But what I'm going to do is take each one off, one after another, restack them, and as we get down the stacks you'll probably see that the paste is looking darker. Now that's the first one where we've got real evidence of a difference. You can see here that you're starting to get a very dark line around the edge, and what you find when you're making fruit leathers is they tend to dry from the outside in. Here again you can see real signs of change, and as we get further and further down the stack it gets more and more pronounced. So on this one here, look at the corners and the edges, it's really starting to stop being a sloppy paste and become more of a jelly like consistency, and on the very bottom one that's extremely pronounced. So the next job is to pick the whole stack up now that they're in the reverse order and pop it onto the base. And what we've done then in just a few minutes is got the dehydrator the other way around, so that the ones that are least dried will now dry the most quickly. Different day, different hoodie. After about 23 hours, that's how long this stuff sort of takes, our fruit leather is ready. It looks fantastic. It's a beautiful, deep, shiny red colour. It's going to taste fantastic. Let me bring you in close. Let's see how we take it off the trays, because trust me, it's quite sticky. How we turn it into a usable product. Come on. This is one of our trays, and this is the sheet, dehydrator sheets that I was talking about. You can see now why they make a difference. They support the fruit leather during the drying process. You really can't do it without. If you haven't got them, make something. Okay, you could make this shape from baking parchment, from cling film, what have you. But honestly, these reusable sheets are worth it. Now, When you've got this done right, and because of the shiny nature of a dehydrator sheet, it just peels away. See how shiny and... There we have it. Now, honestly, you can just start chewing on the corners if you want. Not really my bag. The traditional way of turning this into a, inverted commas, fruit roll-up, take your scissors, slice it up. It offends me, I'm going to be honest, it just offends me. So, we cut off one edge, and that's our immediate snack. And we can start just scoring, and it'll tear away in nice, neat lines. Then what we do to make a delicious snack is just roll it up into little spirals. And there is one homemade fruit roll-up. Excuse me chewing. Those offcuts are just too good to waste. What we have here are strawberry, rhubarb, maple fruit roll-ups. You are not going to have to persuade your children to eat them, try and hide fruit into your husband. They'll fight to get hold of these. Trust me, they are delicious. Right? There are no E numbers, there are no preservatives, there are no artificial colourings or flavourings. It's your own fruit, some maple syrup, and an economy dehydrator. And you make pounds and pounds and pounds of the most delicious, healthy snacks. And that's what this is all about. Right, it's not supposed to be a chore, you're not supposed to be making things that are unpleasant to eat. It's got to be good for you and great to eat, and this is. That's it, that's Fruit Leathers. If this sort of content is interesting to you, please hit the subscribe and notify button down below, the thing that looks like a little bell. Give us a thumbs up for this video and tell us in the comments what you'd like to see next. We can do a lot with this machine. We can do jerky, we can do strawberry crisps, we can do onion and garlic and chili powders and make the most fabulous bread you've ever tasted. So tell us, what do you want to see? Anyway, it's been great hanging out with you, and we really hope we'll see you soon. You take care.